Welcome to Critical Thinking and Listening. And so we're going to talk about why listening matters. So let's get started, shall we? Listening is the most frequently used communication skill, according to your textbook. And it accounts for about 50% of our daily communication. Think about how you listen and how often you have to listen to be able to understand what's going on. So there's a critical relationship between learning and professional success. And poor listening skills, misunderstandings can cause miscommunication and conflicts, and honestly, missed opportunities. So think about the fact that maybe you're in a physical class, the professor tells you about your homework, but you were tuned out for whatever reason, and so you missed the assignment instructions. So what's the difference between hearing versus listening? So we know that hearing is a physiological process and it's just the ear receiving sound. But listening is an active process. And it's making sense and responding to messages. So think about the fact that you might be at home, a parent tells you to empty the garbage, and you're gaming at the same time. So you certainly heard, but were you actively listening? And maybe the parent says it to you 2 or 3 times, and the final time the parent shouts, "Didn't I ask you to empty the garbage?" At that point, you listen and you do what you're told to do. So that's the difference between hearing and active listening. It requires your attention, and it requires generally a response. So there is a listening process according to your textbook. So you receive the messages through your ears, obviously, although it's not so obvious, because if it is that a person is hearing impaired, they may not receive messages through their ears, so they may have to receive messages other ways. Then you've got to interpret the message. You've got to evaluate it. Is it something you want to do, something you don't want to do? Do you think of it as a credible thing that you need to do? Then you respond. You might respond verbally or non-verbally. And then if it's something that you think is worth retaining, then you store it away for later. Now, there are types of listening. There's discriminative listening, right? It might be that you're listening for some specific sound or a tone in a person's voice. There's comprehensive listening, so understanding the meaning, just like in this lecture. There's empathetic listening. That's where you're listening with some kind of emotion or caring. There's critical listening. This is where you're listening to see if it's a truth or a lie. There's appreciative listening, like listening to music or poetry. And then think about a doctor who's listening and hopefully empathetically, and you listening to this lecture, hopefully you're using your critical thinking skills to listen. And so that there are barriers to listening, right? There's noise. Think about physical noise, psychological noise, semantic. And what this means is physical noise is the noise that you might hear with a passing car, but psychological noise is what's going on inside of you. Those might be thoughts or ideas that are clashing with your listening. And then the words themselves might be a barrier to listening. Let's say someone's speaking in a different language. You can listen, but you may not be able to interpret. And then there's information overload when too much is coming at you at once. There's prejudgment listening. So you assume what the person's going to say. You might say, oh, stop right there. I know what you're going to say. And then there's messages that have complexity. So sometimes it's hard to follow. Maybe it's a subject in college where, the information is difficult for you. So we have poor listening skills. So there's pseudo listening where we pretend to listen. Yeah, yeah, you nod your head, but you're really not listening. Selective listening means that you're hearing only what you want to hear. Defensive listening is when you are waiting for the person to finish so that you can put your point across. And then ambushing is listening to attack. And so think about if you're in a classroom and you are scrolling while listening, that would be pseudo listening. So you want to become a better listener. You've got to focus and understand that you have distractions and get rid of them. And if you want the person who's talking to you to realize that you're listening to them, paraphrase what they're saying. So you were saying that I should do A, B, and C. That then shows that you are listening because you're showing the person that's speaking with you that you're paraphrasing what they're saying. You might also ask questions, and what this does is it clarifies what you're listening to, and you can ask in class or maybe at work. Then you can also take notes, and this aids in memory and showing empathy with nonverbal cues like shaking your head or holding someone's hand when they are speaking to you about something emotional. So we listen in different contexts. Obviously, this context is academic, but you also have professional listening when you're on a team maybe, or customer service. You have interpersonal listening with family, friends, with your partner. And then you have cultural listening, which is across diverse perspectives, either within your diverse community or outside. Now, critical thinking and listening. Listening also involves more than hearing words. It requires evaluating meaning. And so think about if you're listening to something and someone's saying something, but they're not actually telling you precisely what they want to say. So critical thinking helps assess critical thinking helps assess credibility, logic, and evidence. And so you've got to listen to understand. You've got to listen for logic, and you've got to listen for evidence. And then you might ask, is the message supported by facts or is it bias? Avoid accepting these messages at face value. So you've got to analyze what you're listening to and think, is it credible? Is it logical? Where's the evidence? So if you're listening, let's say, to a wonderful news station, and maybe it's a political speech, are you getting the correct information? Do you need to do a little bit more research? So what are the key takeaways from this from listening and critical thinking? So listening is active, it's not passive. Listening involves interpretation and it involves responses. There are barriers to listening. There's noise, internal noise and external noise. And sometimes we have to evaluate ourselves to see if we are actively listening or passively or pseudo listening. And good listening skills builds trust, understanding, and success in the workplace, with your personal and professional life. And so hopefully you got something out of this lecture, and I'll see you in the next module.